guys, today I am 1 month postpartum and I wanted to share with you some of the things that I have gone throughout this postpartum journey and things that people don't really talk about or tell you when you're pregnant or deciding to have a baby or anything like that. Things that people don't really talk about after labor, after delivering a baby, things that happen to your body, things that happen to you. That really isn't discussed. There were things that I was like, dang, no one ever told me about this and I wish they had. So those are just things that I want to go over with you and share with you. Some of it's going to be like a lot of personal information, TMI, things like that. If you guys are kind of like squirmish or things like that, then you probably don't want to watch this video. But I'm just going to be brutally honest about what goes on and what you may encounter if you're having a natural vaginal birth. So my 1 month postpartum, let's see. So in the hospital, let's go through that. So after I gave birth, I was still very numb from my epidural. I did have an epidural. I was very, very numb, which was heaven and bliss, and it was amazing because I was so numb and didn't feel anything. So it took probably 3 hours for that the numbness to wear off. So the nurse had come in and asked me if I wanted to use the restroom, and I said, no, I need to, feel my legs first. I didn't think I'd be able to get up to go use the restroom at that point. So I waited until the numbness had worn off, and I finally was like, I think I need to go to the bathroom. And so I go to get up, and I thought to myself, did I just pee myself? Like, I think I literally just went to the bathroom, like, on this hospital bed, which they do put kind of like I call them puppy pads, but it's like the little overnight, I guess, even for like toddlers when they're potty training, those little pads that they put down, that was underneath me, thank goodness. So I was just like, oh my gosh, like that was my first, like, please tell me my bladder is going to work. Like, this is not going to be like something that stays forever. So I go into the restroom, and this is now the first time since I gave birth that I'm, going to the bathroom. And they give you, at my hospital, they'd given me the Dermaplast, which I had already bought that just in case. But there was a can of Dermaplast, there was some pads, and the little bottle, I forgot what they call it, the perinatal bottle that you can like rinse with. So that was already in the restroom. I had bought my Dermaplast, I brought that with me, I brought the Tux pads with me, I brought my own pads with me, and my full underwear. So I had those, but they had like the little mesh panties, which I didn't use, well, I used them, I'm lying. I used them the first couple of days, or maybe the first day, I think, because that was what was in there, and I just was too exhausted to even go through my hospital bag, which, by the way, I didn't use majority of what I packed in my hospital bag. I was telling my girlfriend who's pregnant and due in February, let me just tell you what you really need, because what they have you pack from all these lists online and everything else, you don't even use. Like, I can't even, not even half, like I didn't even use half of what was in there. Like, you're in pain, you're just trying to get through it, and all of that stuff really isn't even practical. Like, half of the things that I packed, it was like, why the heck did I pack that? It was just more work for me when I came home to unpack it all and put it all away, but I didn't use majority of it. So that's a whole nother thing. Maybe I should do a video on like what you really need to pack, because the list that they give you online, you don't need any of it. So I didn't use any of that stuff. So the first day, I just used their little mesh panties. So I used their pads and their panties. I used the Dermaplast, used the Tux pads, the little perinatal bottle, rinsed with that. So when I'm in there, the first time, you go to the restroom, I hadn't even I was still kind of like in the trauma of having a baby. Like, my body was still really sore, felt like a truck ran me over. I hadn't even looked at anything. And when I looked down, like, the vagina area is so terrifying. I think it's just from like the pushing and pushing and pushing. And I told my girlfriend, I'm like, I hate to tell you, but like the first time you see it, it looks like oversized like Donald Duck lips. It's so big and it's like terrifying. And I was just like, I hope that's not gonna stay like that. And I didn't tear at all, which I correlate that to when I first found out I was pregnant. I rubbed coconut oil all over the whole vaginal area every single day. And I even talked to my midwife about it and told her, and she said, yeah, you can. It actually helps kind of like lubricate that area, so when you have a baby, the skin is softer and it's not going to tear. So I used coconut oil from the second I found out I was pregnant up until delivery. I used that religiously every single day. Every time I got out of the shower, I just rubbed that on there and made sure that I put coconut oil to keep that area like just with the coconut oil. Just so I was so terrified of tearing, because I kept hearing stories, or my girlfriends would tell me, oh my gosh, I tore from the front to the back and I had all these stitches, and I was so terrified of that. So I used the coconut oil, and my doctor said I had a very small tear internally, and I didn't have anything on the outside. So, and when I came home, I did look with a mirror just to see, because I was like, do I have stitches? But I couldn't see them because it was inside. She said it was a small tear inside. So I did have sutures inside, but nothing on the outside. So I did use coconut oil. I don't know if any of you are pregnant. That may be something that is helpful. I found it helpful, and I tell all my girlfriends who are still pregnant, start rubbing coconut oil on now. So I used all of that stuff in the hospital. And probably the first few days, like, my bladder control was so, like, I didn't have the muscles to contract it. Like how they tell you to work your Kegel muscles throughout pregnancy, I just didn't, like, I couldn't even control it. Like, even if I wanted to stop urine midstream, I couldn't. Like, the muscles just didn't feel like they were very strong, which terrified the crap out of me, because I kept thinking, oh my gosh, am I, like, ruined forever? Like, is this going to be, like, the new life that I have? And luckily, as the weeks passed, like, everything went back to normal and it was fine. So that was kind of scary in the beginning. So if any of you, you know, have encountered that, or you're, you know, pregnant, almost due, just know that that's pretty normal, that you don't have that bladder control. It's pretty normal. So I had that. My sister-in-law had told me, if you need to go number 2, do your first poo in the hospital, because it's almost like having a baby all over again. And I had never heard anything about it. Thank goodness that she told me about it, because I would have been, you know, I would have never thought anything of it. And she was just like, oh my gosh, like, I lied to them, because I guess when she had her children, they told her that she had to go number 2 before they would release her from the hospital. And so she's like, I lied and just told them that I went. And so they didn't ask me if I did, but I thought, well, I should just go now. That is like a whole nother pain. So that is like nothing that anyone can prepare you for. I even was taking Colace before, like just like a stool softener before I delivered. One of my girlfriends told me that she was going to do that too. She's like, I'd heard about that, but I'm so afraid, like, I'm going to poop on the table. And I said, I didn't, and I took the Colace before. They give you a stool softener in the hospital as well. But I told her, I'm like, you might want to go do, like, you know, one of those, what is it called? Not a colonoscopy, a colonics. I'm like, you might want to go do that before if you're worried about it. But that was a whole nother pain. I mean, that was just like torture if you need to go number 2 right before you deliver. Like, within those first couple of days, it's painful, it's torture, and it's one of those things that no one can prepare you for, and no one talks about it. So when you're kind of like not knowing, and you're just sitting there like, oh my gosh, why did I decide I want to do this today? It's kind of like a scary thing. So warning, that's very painful. After I delivered, my belly was still really squishy. It probably took, I stayed in the hospital 2 days. So I think my 3rd day when I came home, my stomach was still kind of like puffy, and then it finally had gone down back to normal, like within that first like week or 2. I dropped, I think the first time I weighed myself was on my 3rd day home, and I think I had already lost like 13 or 15 pounds. And then, and I had gained between 22 and 25 pounds. I had weighed myself like the last couple of days before I delivered, and it kind of fluctuated. So I was between 22 and 25 pounds, and I'm down to, I have 3 more pounds to go before I'm at my pre-pregnancy weight. So within a month, I'm just 3 pounds away. I haven't worked out. I've been cleared to work out, but I haven't worked out yet because I have found like no time. So I'm trying to figure out a schedule of when I can like do all my normal things that I used to do, and I don't know, it may be a while, because the newborn schedule is really, really difficult, and I haven't found time to fit in a workout at all yet. So I haven't worked out, and I haven't really been watching my diet either. I'm not counting macros. I haven't really been like watching. I'm just careful to make sure I get in a lot of water, but I haven't been like super focused on what I'm eating, like as far as like calories and macros and things like that. So within the month, I was back down to, my stomach was pretty flat again, and I'm back to my almost normal weight, just 3 pounds. So that was something that I struggled with my whole pregnancy, because I wasn't sure if I would lose the weight. I didn't know, you know, I have friends who have had both sides of the spectrum. You know, they're still trying to get off the baby weight, and then I have friends who snap back right away. So I didn't know where I was going to fall, because everybody's pregnancy is different and everybody's different, and I didn't know what to expect. So for me, I was thankful, and I know a lot of you had reached out to me and was like, don't worry, don't stress, don't worry. And it's like when you're first time and you're going through it, you don't know, because you don't know how your body's going to react. But it's like, well, I wish I would have known it was going to do this, so I wouldn't have been so like stressed out or like anal about certain things. So that part has been okay. I cannot wait to get back to working out because I feel like I need it, not just for my body, but for my own like sanity. Being a new mom and having a newborn is really difficult. I had like the baby blues and postpartum, like crying and depression, probably the first 2 to 3 weeks, and I did not feel like myself at all. It probably took me up until week 5 to feel normal again. I would cry for, just anything. Little things would set me off, little things would make me sad. My husband would say something and I'm like, you hurt my feelings, and things that now I look back and I'm like, I probably overreacted, but at the time your hormones are so up and down, and if you're going through that, don't think that you're alone, don't feel like you're going crazy. It's just one of those things where it's the hormones, it's like the pregnancy hormones, and then you have their postpartum hormones, and I know that some people get the baby blues or have postpartum depression, and it's a real thing, and it's really difficult, and it's frustrating because you may not understand it or know it, or know like what to do. And so that's why I can't wait to get back to working out, because I'm like, I just need that for my own sanity. But luckily I feel completely fine and back to myself now, but it literally took me 5 to 6 weeks to feel that way. And in the beginning I would just cry. Like I just felt like my life was not the same. My life was so different, and there were days where I was like, this is so difficult. Why am I doing this? Like it was really hard. It was really, really hard for me to accept that old life that I had was over. As in the freedom of doing whatever I wanted, when I wanted, being able to get up and work out at the early hours. And now I'm getting up at the early hours, but it's not to work out, it's to feed. So just completely different. And it was really hard for me to have that adjustment, and to not grieve your old life, but kind of, because your life is never going to be the same. Now you have a new baby, and your life is different. That life that you lived is completely different than now. So that transition for me was so difficult. Like I knew when I was pregnant it was going to be hard, and that's why I savored every moment of like my alone time, or running errands, or shopping, or doing things by myself, because I knew that time was going to be different once I had a baby. But I wasn't prepared for what it was really like. It's completely different, and that's why people used to always tell me when I was pregnant, oh, get your rest, get sleep, because when baby comes you're not going to get any sleep. And I was always like, well, I'm not a bear, I'm not hibernating, like I can't stock up those hours for when the baby comes. So I didn't really sleep in because it didn't really matter, it wasn't going to make a difference. And now I'm not really sleeping in. I'm getting sleep. That's because my husband has had almost 8 weeks off work, so he stays up with the baby all night while I sleep 7-8 hours. So it's been a blessing to me, but he is going back to work the first week of January, so it's going to be hard. I'm going to have to adjust to those sleepless nights, because I've only had maybe a handful, because he's done the majority of them. So, and I'm breastfeeding solely, I hate to say breastfeeding because he's not latching on. I am pumping solely. I try to breastfeed when I'm home a few times if I can. My son didn't latch in the hospital, and he's still not really a latcher. He will sometimes, but not always. So I just pump literally around the clock. So my pump is kind of like my ball and chain. We're always together. And so if you are solely pumping, know that it is possible. If you're not able to latch, I know my doctor, both my OB and my pediatrician, when I told them he wasn't latching, they were both like, oh, well, you're gonna have to supplement with formula. And I didn't say anything to them, but I thought, no, I'm pumping. And when I told the pediatrician I'm pumping, he's like, well, I don't know, are you gonna be producing enough? And I did everything in my power to make sure that I'm producing enough. I was taking drinking the mother's milk tea, and I was doing the, I forgot what it's called, Milk Mom or something. It was a pill. I stopped both of those because they have fenugreek in them, and that was affecting my son's stomach. That was causing, I noticed a huge change in his personality, in his stomach, and the grunts and things like that. And once I stopped it, it was a lot better. So I ended up making some lactation cookies that don't have the fenugreek, and I found a company that I buy all natural products from that have completely upped my supply, so I get double and a half what I was doing. So I've been able to stock some milk away. So I am pumping exclusively, and then I try to still breastfeed. When I'm home, I try to have him latch on, but it's been really difficult. Breastfeeding is not easy, and I always had friends tell me breastfeeding is not easy. And that was one of the things that made me cry so much in the beginning, was the whole breastfeeding thing, because so many people put such an emphasis on breastfeed. It's the best thing. and not everybody can. And don't feel bad if you can't, because it's not easy. It's, you know, whether you can't or you choose that you just don't want to, because there's some of my friends that they don't want to. They can, but they don't want to. And that's okay. As long as your baby is fed, healthy, and happy, that is fine. So don't let anybody make you feel less of a woman, less of a mom, or a bad person if you don't breastfeed. It's something that I'm choosing to do, exclusively pumping, just to make sure that he gets breast milk. Some days I wonder if it's even a good thing, because sometimes his stomach is still having issues. I've had to kind of watch, and I've tried to cut out all dairy out of my diet, but I do watch what I eat because of him. Like, I notice different things react with him. So it is hard. It's such a hard thing, and whether you have a latch issue, and we did check, he's not like tongue-tied or anything like that. He just didn't really latch on. And in the hospital, the lactation nurses just really ticked me off, because they were like so forceful with like pushing his head to my breast, and he was just like squirming and like miserable, screaming. His face was red. He didn't want to take the breast at all. And I kept looking at the lactation nurses like, well, if this is what breastfeeding's about, I'm not doing it, because it looks so forceful. And they're like, no, you have to, you know, grab his head and you have to put it on. I'm thinking, no, it looks like torture. Like, I wouldn't want somebody grabbing my head and like, you know, squishing it on someone's boob. So I was just kind of like, ugh. Like, in the very beginning, breastfeeding to me was just, that was a huge turnoff because of that incident in the hospital. So when I got home and I got my breast friend pillow, and it was more of a relaxed setting, it was easier for me. But at that point, I was already like, I'm just going to bottle feed him with breast milk. So that's something that I decided to do, and it's just as hard of a job if you're pumping nonstop, because there's times where I'm pumping in the car, I'm pumping in public. I wear my little tent around me and just pump, just to make sure I'm keep pumping, because your breasts can get extremely sore when they need to have the milk to be released. So I do pump constantly. I cannot wait for the point where I get, you know, to, I think they say 12 weeks, you can pump like 2 to 3 times a day instead of pumping around the clock every 2 to 3 hours. So I have him on a schedule with feeding and like his feeding nap schedule. So I have that I've started since his newborn up until now at a month. So I have that schedule. So when he feeds and naps, that's when I'm pumping. So it's been hard for me to find time to do anything really, because if I'm not feeding or trying to do laundry or doing something else, I'm pumping. So it's been hard. I did buy the Always pads, the overnight ones, when I was first heavily bleeding in the beginning. I think I bled for like maybe 3 weeks, and then it kind of subsided, and I just used panty liners. But I can tell you, in those first couple of days when I was in the hospital and the first couple of days at home, I wish that I had had Depends. Like, I just bought the Always pads with wings, but the first probably 2 days in the hospital, the heaviest bleed, I wished at that point I had the Depends, because it would have been so much easier, because I had no bladder control and I had heavy bleeding. So if any of you are going through that, maybe keep in mind you might want to get those adult Depends just to have like for the hospital in the first couple days at home. I told my girlfriend that, because she's like, oh, I went out and bought pads, and I said, you might want to just go get a small pack of like the adult Depends, just because it may be easier for you, because I wish that I had had those when I was in the hospital. Just because it's easier, because when you get up from your hospital bed and you're walking to the restroom, you may have urine that comes out, or you may feel those gushes of blood that come out. Not always pleasant, and it's just might be easier if you have the Depends. I wish that I had, because no one had told me about it. They were just like, oh, get thick pads, but no one ever said, oh, you may want to get the Depends, because there's a lot of stuff going on down there that it may be a little bit easier. The same thing with like, you know, right when you give birth, the whole farting thing. That's like, it was one of the things that I was not used to. I was like, oh my gosh, is this like, am I ever going to have control of my front or back side? Because this is really scary. So just know, after birth, sometimes you do fart quite a bit, and maybe there are times where you can't even hold it in. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. It just comes out. So there's just so many things that are just not so glamorous about giving birth and after that people don't talk about, and they probably don't talk about it because it's one of those things where it's either embarrassing, messy, gross, all the above. And so, but these are things that I had encountered that no one had ever warned me about. I did feel like my uterus contracting back. You do feel that. I had a lot of pain, like my first few days. Walking was really kind of difficult. The only way I could explain it to my husband was like my bikini line, like that like joints or the muscles or the tendons, whatever was in there, it hurt so bad, like for a couple of weeks. And it was like, I was really slow to walk because I was still really sore, just from the pushing and just everything down there that's changing and trying to go back into place. The pain for me, I took Motrin like a couple of times. The hospital prescribed Motrin. I tried to take nothing, but there were a couple times I had to take Motrin. I never made any of those postpartum ice packs that people talk about that they make with like the pads. I never made any of those, and I don't even think I used like an ice pack at home. I never had like that kind of extreme pain or burning, anything like that. I just used the Dermaplast and the Tex pads, and the Tex pads really were like cooling to the area, so I never really used like the like popsicle pads, I think that's what they call them. I never really used those. But if you need to make those, you know, as soon as you get home if you're having that like extreme pain or like tenderness down there, because it is uncomfortable. And then those first few nights coming home with your newborn, those were difficult. Our first 2 nights were really difficult. Like I said, my son wouldn't latch on, so I couldn't really breastfeed. So I was pumping and then feeding him the colostrum through like a syringe. They had told me at the hospital to syringe feed him, which I did, which kind of pissed me off because I don't think I should have syringe fed him. I probably should have put it in a small bottle or something, because my son was born at 6 pounds 8 ounces, and we went to the first pediatrician appointment, like those first couple days after he was born, he was down to 5 pounds 10 ounces, and our doctor was like, he's starving. And I said, well, they told me to feed him with a syringe, like 1 milliliter every few hours, which this poor little baby was so like hungry, and we didn't know, we had no idea. That's all they told us, was just syringe feed him the colostrum, you know, 1 milliliter every few hours. And so we were doing that, and he was screaming his head off, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so miserable. What is happening? Like, is this what our child is going to be like? And it was so crazy the first couple of days. And we finally went to the hospital. I mean, the doctor, our first appointment when we got home, the doctor was like, no, he needs to eat 1 ounce every hour. So 24 ounces in 24 hours. And we're like, oh, well, why didn't the hospital tell us that? So when I told him I was going to pump, he's like, are you sure you're going to be making enough? You need a supplement, blah, blah, blah. And I was able to. I'm still able to pump enough and still have some to store. But my doctor was telling me we're probably going to supplement formula, and I didn't have to. But I did, you know, obviously we changed his feedings to the, I do 3 ounces every 3 hours. And he is so much happier. I mean, he really rarely screams his head off or cries, except for when he's having the bad gas pains in his stomach. So the first 2 nights home were just miserable because we did not know what was happening. We're like, he has a clean diaper, we fed him our 1 milliliter, and we just couldn't figure out like why he was screaming his head off, but it's because he was starving. And we just felt horrible after we found out. We were like, we are such crappy parents, like that's horrible. But that's, you know, what the nurses told us to do, so we thought we were doing the right thing. And it's just like a learning curve when you're a new parent trying to figure it all out and trying to do the best for your baby, and then you find out like, oh, I'm doing that wrong. And you know, it was really hard, and those things like made me cry too. I mean, I was just like an emotional blubbery mess like the first few weeks bringing home my son. I'm sure my husband was like, what the hell happened to my wife? She is like crying all the time, emotional, depressed, like what is happening? And I got up every day and I took a shower and I put on my makeup and I got dressed, because luckily he's home and I've been able to do that. But I mean, I try to keep my routine the same, like try to feel my same like self, but it was so hard. Like the depression like came on so strong, and I didn't have that really my whole pregnancy. So to have it after, I was like, what is happening to me? Like I just couldn't figure it out. And I didn't really talk about it with my husband because I was trying to like internalize and process everything on my own, which probably is a mistake, but I just am one of those people that I don't normally encounter that stuff. So it's like I was trying to process like what is wrong with me, what is happening. And it's just the hormones, like there's nothing you can do. There's absolutely nothing you can do. So that's been like the hardest thing. And now that we're at like the 6 weeks, I'm so much happier. It's like I'm finally back to myself. It's just I need to figure out my schedule. Once I figure out a schedule, then I'll be completely happy. But it's been hard. I have my son on a schedule, you know, for his feeding schedule and nap schedule during the day. The evenings are a little bit harder because he doesn't sleep very well at night, and it's probably because he sleeps all day long. And so it's been like, I'm waiting. My girlfriends keep telling me that 3-month mark they start to sleep, and I'm like, really? He's not sleeping yet. So just trying to figure out a schedule has been hard for me. So those are kind of things going through postpartum that's difficult. I mean, it's just a huge adjustment if you've never done it before. It's all big change, like everything's changing. a couple of the items that I have found helpful for me postpartum, I bought one of those postpartum belly wraps. Oh, it's right here. I bought one of these wraps just from Babies R Us. It's the Babies R Us brand. I've used this maybe 2 or 3 times. I really haven't used it at all. It's really uncomfortable and it folds up. Like when you're sitting down, this thing like folds up and gets all squishy, and I haven't used it. Honestly, the 3 times I've used it, I've taken it off every single time because I hate this thing. So I haven't found the wrap to be helpful. If you guys have, that's great. I wish that it did work for me, but my stomach is back to being flat. I just kind of want my insides to come back together because I still feel like my abs are not exactly the same, and I know it's going to take time. But this wrap didn't help me at all. So my postpartum wrap, that wasn't helpful. The thing that I love are these, the Motherhood clip-down sports bras. I'm still like rave about them. I think I told you guys about them in like some of my maternity must-haves or maternity hauls that I've done. I have these in probably every color. I think I own 6, a couple of black ones because I wear those the most. But these clip-down sports bras have been amazing, especially if you're pumping or breastfeeding. They're just really easy, clip down. I stick just a nursing pad in here, so in case my breasts are leaking milk, it'll absorb it and catch. But if you forget to put in a nursing pad in here, these things are still pretty thick. They're not going to leak through the front of it. So I love these. They're the Motherhood. I bought mine online, and then I also got some in store at Macy's in the Motherhood section. But these things are amazing. They're just the Motherhood clip-down sports bra. So if you're nursing or you're pumping, these things are really good to have. I also have the hands-free pumping bra. It's just, it looks like a tube top, and you just zip it up, and it holds the little pump components. So I usually pump while I'm doing my makeup in the morning, so you can be hands-free when you're pumping. And then if I'm downstairs working on the computer or whatever, I'm hands-free with that too. So you could just put that around you. You can even put it around this. Sometimes I'll clip this down, and then I put the hands-free bra, zip it up, and then just keep the pump things out. So this you can still have on. So I found that to be helpful. And then these I bought this when I was still pregnant because I used her, her belly band for my pregnancy for working out. But this is the Beige, this is the nursing tank. And this right here, the opening is low in the front because your sports bra or your nursing bra is going to go here. So this part goes underneath your bra. So if you're breastfeeding out in public, it's nice because your belly is covered, and then you have like the support. It's really comfortable. It's a really nice fabric. I loved this one so much that I ended up, I think she did like a Black Friday sale, and I ended up buying this one. And I forgot how much it was. It was like, I think $29 or $39. I don't recall, but she had a special for Black Friday and ended up getting a purple one. I really wish she'd make this in black. She did, when I messaged her on Instagram, she said she is going to be making a black one, because I don't wear this one as much. I wear the gray one a lot more because it's more universal. But these are just so handy. I wanted to have a second one as a backup because I use them every day. I just got it in a small. They're super comfortable. The fabric is really nice, and they're nice if you're pumping or breastfeeding, because when you lift up your shirt, you're completely covered up. And then this, like I said, just goes underneath your nursing bra or your sports bra. So I can leave her link for these as well. I love these. I don't know, I'm sure you could probably find something like this similar in the stores, but these I just had bought. I bought one when I was pregnant, and the one I recently purchased. But those are some of my like nursing things that I love to have, and I wear them all the time. So if you're pumping or breastfeeding, you may want to look into those because they are nice to have. And I think that's everything as far as my postpartum. Can't really think of anything else. It is a lot of fun. I love having my son, but it is difficult at times. So if you're going through that, I sympathize and empathize with you because I've been there. I get it. Just hang on if you're in those early like weeks. Don't worry, you'll feel back to yourself. Hopefully by your week 6 or 8. And just know that you're not alone. So if any of you are going through it, or if you're still, it's hard. But as women, we should all come together, support each other, and just know that you're being thought of and that you're not alone in your journey. So that is everything for my 1 month postpartum experience thus far. I'm hoping that everything just continues to go smoothly, and I can figure it all out. So one day at a time, right? So thank you so much for following along, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.